Hello, everybody. Welcome to Amar's Game Chat. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. I am Amar, and for my very first video of this year, I wanted to do a hopes and predictions video for Nintendo's 2026. And I think it's going to be a very exciting year. We have a couple of things that we already know about. Some of them are pictured here on the opening slide of this slideshow I made. But I also expect a couple of surprises. There's going to be some anniversaries that Nintendo is going to be celebrating, or, at least doing something for, I believe, this year. And yeah, I think it's gonna be a very exciting year again. There's a couple, and obviously, and I have some hopes and predictions that I wanted to talk about. And yeah, so let's get right into it. I hope you all enjoy this video. If you have your own hopes and predictions for this year when it comes to Nintendo, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So the structure of this video is basically I split it into two different parts. The first part is things that we already know about. So as you can see here, that includes things like Mario Tennis Fever, Animal Crossing New Horizons. This first slide is things that we already know that are dated. The next section will be about things that we know are releasing this year, or at least slated to release this year in the spring. Which surprisingly, honestly, we know a couple of. I think we know more right now than we normally know about the spring, so that's kind of cool. It's kind of like it's allowing me to make a couple of predictions for release dates for the first half of this year. And then we also have another section just focusing on things that are slated for this year that don't have specific seasons, things that are Nintendo's announced that don't have release dates, like for 2026 or in general. And then we have one thing that's releasing next year that I expect to see this year because it is tied to a specific 40th anniversary. But yeah, and then obviously the second part is focused on mainly hopes and predictions. Maybe a couple of things sprinkled in there that we know about that I'm just hoping or predicting for, in terms of how they'll show up in this year. But yeah. I'm very excited again for this year. I made a couple of slides. Normally I don't do a slideshow for these videos, but normally I also go a little bit, I go off tangent sometimes, or I go on a tangent sometimes. So I figured this would help a little bit. I'm expecting still for there to be a couple of off-topic discussions and tangents, just because I don't think I included everything I want to talk about in these slides. Sometimes I read something and then I'm like, oh, I forgot to mention this, but hopefully that keeps it to a minimum here. I'm already going on a tangent, but yeah, the first thing I want to talk about, the things that we already have release dates for. So we have 5 things right now that have release dates, being the Animal Crossing New Horizons Nintendo Switch 2 edition and its 3.0 update, Mario Tennis Fever, Nintendo Classics Virtual Boy, Pokemon Pokepia, and the Super Mario Galaxy movie. So 4 games and 1 movie. All these things I'm very, very excited for. I'll talk a little bit about each of them. So, Animal Crossing New Horizons Nintendo Switch 2 edition. I'm not the biggest Animal Crossing fan. I love the series. The series is very good and everything, but I didn't really grow up with Animal Crossing. My first game and my introduction to the series was through Animal Crossing New Leaf. So, I'm not as connected to it as a lot of people, but I did love New Horizons. I loved my time in New Horizons. I'm excited to revisit it, even though I don't know how much I'll play of Nintendo Switch 2 edition and 3.0 update. What I'm most excited for is I think this is laying the groundwork for a couple of the features that we're going to be seeing in a future Animal Crossing, presumably a future Animal Crossing for the Nintendo Switch 2. Things like the 12-player online multiplayer, and maybe even Dream Islands. We're seeing Dream Islands being introduced again, but even the introduction of being able to use your webcams and Nintendo Switch 2 camera in the game. I imagine this is something that they've done this a couple times before with a couple of games where they introduce a feature in an older game, normally through an update, and then that it's a testing bed for for that same feature to appear in another game at launch. So the most recent example I believe of this is the Mario parties. So with in Super Mario Party, they released an update I believe in 2021 that added the ability to play boards online. And then just a couple of months later, they introduced that same mechanic in through an announcement with Mario Party Superstars. They announced that's going to be there at launch. So I think that's kind of what they're doing here. It's a new feature, it's a $5 upgrade, so it's not adding new modes or anything to the game. It's just basically enhancements for tomorrow for my Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I think this is very cool. I'm very excited for it again. I'm excited to see the entire Captain family return back to Animal Crossing. Through their hotel that they own, and yeah, it's out January 15th, so I honestly wanted to get this video out before January 15th, because I'm expecting like reviews to show up for Animal Crossing New Horizons again, and I'm expecting a lot of information on the update. The update honestly may be releasing like a couple of hours earlier before the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, based on how Nintendo sometimes releases their updates. So again, I'm very excited for it. Again, I don't know how much time I'm gonna really spend playing it. I'm expecting, honestly, for me to probably spend a lot more time watching others play it, because I think this is gonna be a lot more of like a customization and creative update for the game. And I'm not like the best with a lot of the mechanics in Animal Crossing, so I think it's gonna be really cool to watch other people play it and like see how they develop some of the rooms in the hotel, and seeing some of the mischief that they might be going, like some of the stuff, like the mischief they're gonna be doing with like their 12-player online, and even some like Dream Islands. I think that's gonna be really cool to see how others use it. But yeah, I'm very excited. It's out January 15th, so not very far away from both the time I'm recording this, less than a week from the time I'm recording this, and probably just a couple of days by the time I upload this. The next game is Mario Tennis Fever, which is releasing on February 12th. Honestly, I think if you had asked me before they released the overview trailer just a couple of days ago, I'd probably say like this, like in terms of like my most anticipated games, this is probably like in the middle. Like if a top 10 of most anticipated games, it's probably like right around in the middle. But I think with the overview trailer, it honestly raised it to like number 2 or 3 in my opinion. The overview trailer was just really good. Obviously, since we've known for a while now that this would be like the biggest roster for a Mario sports game, or I think at least for a Mario Tennis game, maybe not Mario Baseball, but at least for a Mario sports game or a Mario Tennis game, this is like the biggest roster they've done. I believe this is probably the most ambitious story mode or adventure mode that they've ever done on a Mario Tennis game, and I'm imagining, this might be the most courts they've ever done. That one I don't know much about. I don't think they really expressed how many like courts are in this game, or if this is the most courts in Mario Tennis game. But in general, I'm very excited for it. Same thing with like Animal Crossing. I didn't really grow up on Mario Tennis. My first Mario Tennis was Mario Tennis Open, and then I played Mario Tennis Aces. I did not play Mario Tennis Ultra Smash. So maybe that makes me a little more excited for this game, because I know I think I would have liked Mario Tennis Ultra Smash just because of the tennis features, but I do like the story modes in Mario Tennis Aces, and I'm assuming I'm gonna like the one, especially in Mario Tennis Fever, since it seems like it's like even an upgrade to that one. So I'm very excited for that game. I'm very excited to see, we're getting Baby Waluigi for the first time, and that's obviously just play into the story mode of the game. So I just think it's gonna be a very fun game. I'm very excited for it. Again, it's and this one's just around a month away, so a lot of these games, they're releasing in less than 2 months. Obviously, the Super Mario Galaxy movie is releasing in less than 3 months, so we're not very far away from a lot of these things, and I'm very, very excited for them. And then that, just 5 days later, we have Nintendo Classics Virtual Boy. For me, I think I'm excited for it, but I'm excited for the novelty of it more so than to actually use it, because I'm gonna use it once in a while, but I don't know how often I'll use it. I guess it's a very cool little again, novelty, cool experience, I think, especially as someone that did not play the Virtual Boy, like hasn't used a Virtual Boy or played on the Virtual Boy yet. I think it's just gonna be a very cool, little experience. It seems like they're gonna do the same thing they do with all the NSO titles, where they're gonna release like a selection of games at launch for the service, and then the Nintendo Virtual Boy doesn't have like too many games, so I'm expecting probably by the end of the year, like by the middle of next year, all of them will be released by then. But still, I think it's a very cool little thing Nintendo's doing. It's like they're kind of preserving like their older titles through NSO, and I think that's very fun, because I think this is probably the biggest Nintendo Classics library we've ever seen for a console. So again, I think they're preserving it. It seems like these titles are probably going to stay on the service forever, I'm imagining, because I don't really know Nintendo's ever going to really transition away from the Nintendo Switch, and at least Nintendo Switch Online and like the Nintendo Count system. So I'm assuming we're gonna probably keep a lot of these. Like this is like their way of preserving a lot of their older games, which I think is really cool. But speaking of Virtual Boy, I think it's really cool. I haven't ordered mine yet, but I'm planning to. I'm at least planning to get the cardboard thing, the cardboard one, which I already have that kind of with Labo, but um, I also do want to get like the actual headset. So we'll see. I'm very excited for it. At least I'm very excited for the novelty. And then the last two things are Pokemon Pokopia, which is my most anticipated game right now for the year, and which is releasing on March 5th. And then the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which is probably my most anticipated movie for the year. So two of the most anticipated things I currently have already have release dates and are very, very close. Um, you know, I don't think Pokopia would have been a game that I would traditionally play. I haven't played any of the Dragon Quest Builder games yet, or I think I might have one, but I've never played any of them. So this game wouldn't be one I would have traditionally played in the past, but it has Pokemon in it, and I think I love Pokemon. Like Pokemon are my most favorite franchise of all time. So it's a game I want to try out, and I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun with it. In a lot of ways, I'm kind of expecting it to be like my Animal Crossing New Horizons, or like my Animal Crossing, like that will be my like version of that game. And I'm not expecting it to be like honestly very similar to Animal Crossing. Obviously, it's gonna have like the town building aspects and like the farming aspects and like the gardening and everything. But I think it's gonna be a little more of like an adventure based game. I'm expecting there to like you have to like maybe defeat a Pokemon here or there to like get their abilities. We don't know too much about it yet. It is again releasing in less than 2 months, but I'm expecting a new trailer for it very, very soon. I don't think they're gonna wait until like Pokemon Day to show it off again. So I'm expecting like an overview trailer for it very, very soon. But I'm very excited. I'm just very excited for it. It looks very fun. It looks like it's gonna be a very fun time. It has online multiplayer, so I'm hoping to play with others in the game. But I'm just very, very excited. It's gonna be a very fun time, I think, and it's a very great way to. I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, but it is a very fun way to start the 30th anniversary. Right after Pokemon Day and presumably the Pokemon Presents that we'll be getting on Pokemon Day. But the final thing that we have a release date for is the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Again, this is my most anticipated movie. It is releasing on April 3rd. I included a picture here. Because on the other slide, I did have most of these things. So I have Mario Tennis, I have Tomodachi Life, which we'll talk about in a minute. We have Pokopia, and we have Yoshi, the Mysterious Book, which we will also talk about in a minute. But I didn't really include Animal Crossing and Mario, the Super Mario Galaxy movie on that slide. So included them here. I'm very excited for the Mario Galaxy movie. Obviously they're using Mario Galaxy like the basis, and I'm expecting to see, we've already been introduced like Rosalina and Bowser Jr. I'm expecting to see a couple more characters. I think they've already confirmed that there'll be a couple more characters that, maybe that probably aren't like as connected to the Mario Galaxy story. And it seems like they're gonna have multiple stories here. Like obviously the Mario Galaxy one would be like the main one, but we've already seen like Toast Arena, and we've already seen a couple of like Easter eggs like other especially 3D Mario games, that they may like touch a little bit on the storylines from those games, to a certain extent. Obviously, we might just go to like certain locations from those games, but I'm very excited for it. It seems like we might be getting Captain Toad in this movie, which I'm also very excited for. They were kind of building up to that in the first movie, but I think it's just very cool. We're getting a sequel to the Mario Galaxy. We're getting a sequel to the Super Mario Bros. Movie in the form of a Mario Galaxy movie, and I think it's gonna be really cool to see all the planets. It's gonna be really awesome to hear Gusty Garden Galaxy get a full rendition of it in this movie. And yeah, I'm just very, very excited for it. Maybe they'll have some other characters. There's possibly we see like Daisy in this movie, Wario, the Koopalings. Like those are like I think those are like the more basic characters. Obviously, we're going to see some deeper cuts in this movie. Obviously, we're going to see Captain Toad. Maybe Toadette will show up, everything like that. But I'm very, very excited. Maybe EGOT will show up in like the post-credit scene or something for a Luigi's Mansion movie. Who knows? But I think this is a very good lineup of games and like a movie that we already know has release dates. But there's also some things that are slated for the spring. So let us get right into that. So yes, part two, the section two of part one. My bad, I said part two. It's part one, section two, and this is games and projects that we already know about that are slated for spring 2026, and we have three games slated for this, and then two amiibos. So we have the we have the Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 edition, plus Meet Up in Bella Bell Park, which is currently slated for spring 2026. All these are slated for spring 2026. We have Yoshi in the Mysterious Book, and we have Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. I have predicted release dates for every single one of these as well, which I think is really cool. I think that's like, it's cool that we have these spring release dates because I'm able to introduce like some predictions early on here. So Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus Meet Up at Bella Bella Park. Honestly, I think I'm very excited for it. We haven't seen much of it yet, so we'll be like in the little screenshot I have right here. Obviously, Captain Toad there, but we also see the Koopalings, which are not in the original game. So I'm hoping there's gonna be like a pretty expansive story mode to this game, and that would kind of make sense because we are 3 years since Super Mario Wonder, and I'm assuming like they probably knew that they were gonna make this for a little while ago. So I think that's very cool. We're gonna see the Koopalings. Maybe I don't think they're gonna do like a whole new world, like 8 worlds to go back to explore to. But if we get like a couple hours of like story mode content, and then obviously I think there's also gonna be a very large focus on multiplayer in this game. I think that's gonna be very cool. I will be getting this on launch. I'm very excited for it. I'm predicting it's gonna release on April 2nd alongside the Mario Galaxy, Mario, and Rosalina amiibos. There's a couple of things that they kind of showed off. I don't think they meant to show off just yet in the reveal trailer, so I won't talk about them here just because I know that's like kind of spoilers until they officially talk about them. But that might be, this kind of seems like it's gonna be a little like it seems like it's gonna be the tie-in for the Mario Galaxy movie, that Nintendo's game tie-in for the Mario Galaxy movie, like the game they want to have on the shelves when the movie releases on April 3rd. So that's very cool. And then we also have Yoshi in the Mysterious Book. Again, this looks really cool. I think I'm a lot more favorable for the Yoshi series compared to other people. Like I really like Crafted World. I didn't play much of Woolly World, so maybe that's also why. But I like, from what I played of Woolly World, I really like Woolly World as well. And this game, honestly, it looks really good. Like visually, it looks really good, and I'm just excited to see more of it. We're probably gonna see more of it very soon, in less than a month, I'm assuming. Around a month from now, in Nintendo Direct. But it just looks really good. Obviously, they haven't shown too much of it, which I know that's also probably why a lot of people are a little more worried about it, or maybe a little more down on it, because this could be very similar to like maybe the lower end of the Yoshi games that like a lot of people don't like, or it could be something like Woolly World, which I know a lot of people like. So I'm very excited just to see more of it. I'm predicting it's going to release on April 23rd, so it's going to be, so I think Nintendo's going to do something where I think we're all assuming that Yoshi's going to appear in the Mario Galaxy movie. So they're going to have Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which probably has a lot of characters from the Galaxy movie, and then they're going to have Yoshi, which Yoshi is also in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but I think Yoshi's going to have a pretty large focus in the Galaxy movie, so it makes sense for Yoshi to also have a new game released around the Galaxy movie. So I think April 23rd is a pretty good date for it. And then the final thing that is currently slated for spring 2026 is Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. Of all the games that we've talked about so far, only the Virtual Boy and Tomodachi Life are releasing on the Switch 1. And this kind of speaking, like this, obviously they're kind of slowing down on Switch 1 releases, and that's kind of speaking to that. But Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, it was announced in March of last year, and it is currently again slated for spring 2026. I love Tomodachi Life on the 3DS, so I'm very excited for this one. It seems like they're honestly building on it a lot. Like it seems like there's gonna be a lot more interactivity in this game, and they're it seems like they built like actual full-on like world sets that you can be able to like go around to, and it isn't gonna be like mainly like at your apartment building. Like you seem like you can be able to interact with a lot more of the characters just as they're walking around. And we already saw like in the September Direct trailer that like you can like kind of build the lives of certain characters like the way that you want to build them, which is gonna be really fun. I'm just really excited for Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, like Pokopia and like Animal Crossing. Well, especially like Animal Crossing. I think I'm gonna be playing a lot of Pokopia, but I think there's gonna be a game. This is gonna be a game that I revisit a lot this year, just to like see how my Miis are doing. It is the only game I believe amongst every single game so far. Maybe Mario Tennis Fever had like a Mii character, but it seems like this is the only game right now, and especially I think there wasn't many games last year that used the Mii's, if any. That's going to be using the Mii's, so that's also a very cool element. You know, we're gonna the game focused specifically on the Mii's, so I think it's very fun. But I'm predicting it's going to release on May 14th. Those are pretty specific to dates. You know, again, I think it's in general. Mario Wonder is probably gonna release in April. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book's gonna release like between like in that gray area of like late April to early May, and I think Tomodachi Life is also gonna release in May. So very cool. You know, I'm very excited for all the games we've talked about so far. You know, interestingly, you know, this is four games here. I guess you can't. I mean, the Virtual Boy is a little different, but that's at least 3 games there, and there's 3 games here. So that's already 6 games that we have releasing in the first half of this year, and there is a possibility that we have one more. 2 more according to what I've done here. But the final section of this part is what we already know announced for 2026 and beyond. So this again includes games that are announced for this year, but they don't have specific seasons or release dates. We have one game here, Splatoon Raiders, that doesn't have a release window at all, but I do expect to release this year. And then we have the Legend of Zelda movie. I'm kind of which was releasing on May 7th, 2027. So we have a solid release date for that. But I do think we're going to see a trailer for it this year. So I did want to include it here, just so I can mention that for a little bit. But again, here we have 4 games. Pokemon Champions is a little different just because it is a Switch 1, Switch 2, and, Switch 1, I believe a Switch 2, and a like a mobile game. So it doesn't fit like the full criteria of what I'm talking about here, but still, I wanted to include it just because I think that's gonna be like one of the major things of Pokemon Day. Obviously, we have another major thing that I think they're gonna show off on Pokemon Day, but I think that's gonna be like I think that's gonna shadow drop during the Pokemon Day Pokemon Presents. I would have honestly said February 27th, but February 27th is a Saturday, and I don't know if they're gonna do a Pokemon Presents on the Saturday. They might do it on the Friday like they did in 2025, or not 2025. They did it for the 25th anniversary. Obviously, for the Scarlet and Violet reveal, they did that Presents during the weekend, so they may do this one on the weekend. Who knows? But I just wanted to say Pokemon Champions, Pokemon Day. I think it's gonna be a shadow drop during that Pokemon Presents, and it looks really cool. You know, I'm not super into the competitive Pokemon Champions, like into the battling of Pokemon, but I'll probably play it. You know, I'll probably build a team in there, and I'll probably play it for a little bit. So I'm very excited. It looks very cool. But the other 3 games are Rhythm Heaven Groove, which is slated to release this year still. We didn't see it in September, which is very interesting, which I honestly thought that game would have probably released before Tomodachi Life, based on, you know, it looked like it was a little more further along. Like they both looked like they were pretty far along. So, but I figured Rhythm Heaven would like been an early this year game, like a January this year game, maybe like alongside Animal Crossing. But it did not end up being like that, and I don't think it's gonna release before Tomodachi Life now, since we didn't see it in that September Direct. But I don't think it's gonna be that far behind Tomodachi Life. I'm predicting it's gonna release on June 4th, and I think we're gonna see it very soon again. I think we're gonna see many of these games very soon again, in a very close, I believe very close, like a couple of weeks, maybe a month away, Nintendo Direct. But this game looks really good. I am really excited for it. I really love Rhythm Heaven Megamix on my 3DS. I believe it's the 3DS one. I believe Megamix is the 3DS one. So I'm very excited just to try. You know, they're bringing back Rhythm Heaven for the first time, pretty much in I think it's been 10 years. And I think I probably predicted a Rhythm Heaven earlier last year. Like, I would have to look back, but Rhythm Heaven usually is a game that comes out later in the generation. Like, I think like with the 3DS one, that came out like a year before the Switch came out. I believe the Wii was the same way. Like, it came out like a year before the Wii U one. I don't know about the DS one, but I would assume maybe it was around like the time that the DSi came out. So Rhythm Heaven has been a later in the generation game, and that's what they're following with here as well. And yeah, it looks really cool. It looks some of the micro games that they've or rhythm games that they've already shown off looks really awesome. So I'm very excited for it. That will be a game that I will be playing on launch day, as long as like nothing major is also around it that like takes away some of my time. But I'm excited for Rhythm Heaven Groove. I will be trying it out at least for a little bit, in whenever it releases. But I'm assuming it's gonna release sometime in early June, mid June, somewhere around there. And then we have Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which was the closer of the September Nintendo Direct. Again, that is also just slated to release in 2026. Fire Emblem Three Houses did release in July, so I did predict another July release date, July 23rd for it. I think we're going to have a large blowout for it next month, or in March during the Nintendo Direct. And yeah, I'm very excited for it. It is seemingly going to be at least either a prequel or a sequel to Three Houses. And, so I wouldn't be surprised maybe if it's a sequel, I wouldn't be surprised if like we see like here. I don't think like the old characters are gonna show up in this one. Like I don't think Claude and Dimitri and Elgard are gonna show up here, like, or Byleth. But I think we could hear a little bit about those games, that game, in this one, like some references to it. But yeah, I'm very excited for it. I love Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is a very weird series for me because, again, like many series outside of Pokemon, and Mario and Zelda, I did get introduced to it on the 3DS, like in the DS 3DS era. So I'm not as like connected to some of these series as a lot of people are, but I love Fire Emblem. I love Fire Emblem Awakening, Fates, and Three Houses, and Echoes, and I even like Engage a lot. So I'm very excited for Fortune's Weave. Again, it's gonna be a game that I think I'm not gonna play like a lot at launch, just because I think it's gonna be a game that like I play for a very long time. Like I'm still playing Three Houses to this day, so I think it's gonna be a game. I'm very excited for it. I don't have really much to predict about it just yet. I think once we get to, like, the Direct, I'm probably gonna like predict, like, see like a massive overview for it. We'll see some characters. We'll see like the new map. Maybe we'll see if like the Coliseum like introduces anything different for this game. But I'm very, very excited for it, as I've mentioned many times before. And then the final game that we know about that doesn't have a release date, and this one doesn't have a release date, but it's not even slated for 2026, is Splatoon Raiders. I'm predicting it to release in August/September of this year. We saw a good amount of it, honestly, in the reveal trailer for it last June. I think we honestly might have seen more of it than we've seen of like Rhythm Heaven Groove at this point. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it releases even earlier than August, September. But since we doesn't have a release window, I'm just assuming it's gonna be like a little bit of a later in the year game. It does look really good. I love the single player Splatoon games, and since this is seemingly going to be just a straight like single player story that's like a little bit more like action adventure oriented, like platformer oriented, I'm I think that's gonna be a very cool mix, and I'm glad to see that they're actually like doing Splatoon spin-offs and they're building a little bit more on the Splatoon lore and the Splatoon world. Obviously, I think we see here that I think this is Big Man, Shiver, and Fry, which we have Fry back there. I don't know if you can see Fry, but Fry is also back there. But yeah, I think it's gonna be very, very cool. I think that it's gonna be a story that's very much focused on the Splatoon 3 story, like after the DLC and everything. Or like after at least the main campaign of Splatoon 3. And then the last thing, we have our first look at it right here, is the Legend of Zelda movie. It is releasing on May 7th, 2027. So I don't think we're gonna see like a major look at it this year, but it is the Zelda 40th anniversary. So I am expecting to at least see the first trailer for the movie this year. Maybe not in Nintendo Direct, maybe it's gonna get its own Nintendo Direct. Maybe they do a Zelda specific Nintendo Direct for a bunch of Zelda announcements, but I'm expecting to see a trailer for this year. I'm very excited for it. Just from the screenshot, it looks, not the screenshot, like the screen cap of, like, I'm assuming that they did this, I think, right when the movie started filming. They both look very, very good. I'm expecting some casting this year, but I think the movie's gonna be very fun. Maybe it won't be the best movie of all time, but I think it's gonna be a very fun movie to watch. I think they're gonna do Zelda and Link and the Legend of Zelda series just really well. So I'm very, very excited for that. But that is all we have that's currently known about for this year or later, in the future. That's all the things Nintendo's announced so far. So now we are going to get right into pretty much predictions for the rest of the year, things that we don't really know about just yet. And I'm very, very excited for that. So the place I would like to start off with when it comes to predictions and hopes for 2026 are the events that will be hosted throughout this year. So that includes mainly Nintendo Directs, the Pokemon Presents, which in this year would be tied to Pokemon's 30th anniversary, maybe something to do with the Legend of Zelda 40th anniversary, and then the additional events that will be hosted this year, mainly in the form of the Indie Worlds, maybe a non-gaming Nintendo Direct, and then something new. Maybe they find out a new way to directly broadcast information to us that isn't Nintendo Directs. Who knows? But I think for this section, I'm mainly just going to focus on when these presentations will be airing, just because I normally also just do predictions for like general Nintendo Directs, and I'll probably do like a reaction and probably lead up to the Mario movie Direct and everything like that. So I think here I'm just going to predict the days and when they will be, not the days, but like around the time that they'll be airing. And I'll start with the Nintendo Directs. For Nintendo Directs, I think we're going to be returning to more of a normal schedule for them. So that mainly means February, as I stated here, or March, June, and September. So 3 general Nintendo Directs this year. That is my expectation. Obviously, the reason why I say a return to the norm is because obviously last year was a little bit different. In the form that we got a general March and September Direct. We got the Nintendo Switch 2 showcase in April, and then we also had a partner showcase in July. I'm not expecting them to do something like that this year. Obviously, a little bit later, I also ask, are we going to get another partner showcase this year? I'm not expecting it. I do think we're going to mainly get these 3 general Nintendo Directs. I think one of them will probably be a little less announcement heavy and a lot more focused on the actual games that are already announced. So like new trailers for I'm mainly focused, I guess I'm talking mainly about like the February Direct. I'm expecting that one to mainly focus on the trailers for like Tomodachi Life and Fire Emblem Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, and like Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, and then maybe 1 or 2 new game announcements there. But then I'm expecting like June, September to be a little more announcement heavy. But then, we also have Super Mario Movie Galaxy Directs. Do I think we're going to see 1 more or 2 more of those? I do think we will see at least 1 more. But I'm thinking 2 more just because I think we're going to get 1 this month. So I didn't state that here, but I think we will get 1 this month. At least right before the Super Bowl, so that the Super Bowl spot can be a little different from the Direct, and that it can feature like maybe Yoshi or a couple of the characters that was not featured in the first trailer for the movie and like the first Direct for the movie. And then I think we're gonna have 1 like around not Pokemon Day, around Mario Day, which they could do a general Mario Direct on Mario Day, because we will probably still have a couple of titles that haven't, if any of these titles have released yet. We probably will have like the Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 edition that probably hadn't released yet. Maybe the Yoshi Mysterious Book game that hasn't released yet, and stuff like that. Maybe we'll have a Mario announcement from the February Direct in this case, but I'm thinking we're gonna have mainly a Mario Galaxy Movie Direct on Mario Day, and then like most of the game news will probably be focused around like the February and the June and the September Directs. And then I also asked if we will get, again, I also mentioned about the partner showcase. Again, I don't think we'll see another one this year. They could do one this year if obviously they want to do mainly trailers for. Like, if we get a partner showcase, I think it will be the first Direct of the year, so the February Direct, and I think that would just mainly be in the form of them also just doing like largely just like trailers for Tomodachi Life and Yoshi and the Mysterious Book and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And I don't think they'll do that, but I think in that case they will do with the partner showcase and then pretty much release trailers from probably like from this month until like the next general Direct in like June. And that could obviously also change what happens on Mario Day. If they do skip out on a general Nintendo Direct in the early part of this year, I could see a Mario Day Direct happening and has like the next trailer for like the Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 edition and Yoshi again. And then game specific Directs, I do think we'll see 1 or 2 this year, but I can't really predict which ones, because I don't think we're going to see one for like the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Mario Wonder or Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. We could see one for Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave or Tomodachi Life, but besides that, I don't really there isn't really any other games announced right now that I think would warrant a game specific direct. But obviously, once we get past the February direct, once we get past the June direct, I could easily see us getting a game specific direct for a game that's like announced in one of those directs, like something like Luigi's Mansion 4, which we will get into in a little bit. Besides that, obviously we have the Pokemon Presents that we normally get every year. We usually get two, so I predict that we will have one on Pokemon Day and another on Pokemon, and another like in July or August. That's probably focused mainly on the games that they announced during the Pokemon Presents on Pokemon Day, but I think we will get two this year. And then obviously I also mentioned Pokemon Worlds 2026 and Pokemon XP, which Pokemon XP is a new experience that Pokemon will be hosting this year in, I believe, I don't remember where Pokemon Worlds was last year. It was either in Anaheim or San Francisco, and then this year it's either in Anaheim or San Francisco. Depends on which one was last year, but I believe honestly it was in San Francisco. I believe this year's in San Francisco. So Pokemon World in San Francisco, and then Pokemon Experience, which is pretty much a new Pokemon experience. You know, it's like a Pokemon convention, I'm believing, or what I'm thinking. It'll be a Pokemon convention that's a little more distance, like a little more different than Pokemon Worlds, where Pokemon Worlds is a lot more focused on the competitive scene. I think Pokemon XP would be more focused on like the community and like having like smaller events, like with like maybe like panels and that stuff, which would be very fun. I think that'd be very cool. I'm very excited to see what that turns into. And then the last thing I've really talked about here is the Legend of Zelda 40th anniversary. It's really interesting because I don't think we're gonna get a Legend of Zelda movie direct. I mentioned it here, but I don't think we're gonna get a Legend of Zelda direct specifically. I think that will again be tied into the general Nintendo Directs throughout the year, similar to what they did with Mario last year, where they had like a Mario Direct that pretty much opened the September Direct, and then they had like the normal general Direct after that. I can see that happening again with Zelda. Maybe a little shorter because I don't know how many Zelda announcements we'll really be getting this year, but I don't think they're gonna do a movie direct with the trailer, or I think they might do something similar to what they again did last year, where they had like a small tidbit in a general Nintendo Direct, and then they had a movie direct trailer. So I think if we get a Zelda trailer, Zelda Direct this year, it will be a movie direct. But obviously it depends on how they really want to handle the marketing for the Zelda movie. They may just drop trailers instead of doing directs. We have to see, because obviously it's a little different than, because Mario movies are obviously made by Illumination and the Zelda movies made by Sony Pictures. So we have to see like how they really want to manage marketing for it. It could be a little different, but I think we get a Zelda specific direct this year. It will be the movie direct. And then the last section is just additional events. So I think we'll get Indie Worlds this year. I think we'll get one or two. I think we'll get one in the first half and one in the second half of the year. I don't think we'll get any non-gaming Nintendo Directs this year. I don't think we got any last year. Maybe early last year with the Donkey Kong expansion to Nintendo World in Japan. But I don't think we'll see another non-gaming Nintendo Direct this year. I guess we could get a museum direct or a expansion direct to the Super Nintendo World Parks, but we have to see about that. That's like a little harder to predict. And then something new, again, who knows? That's just me like saying maybe we'll get a new type of showcase this year. But I don't think we will. I think it will be mainly Nintendo Directs. The Pokemon Presents. I guess a Zelda movie direct would be something new, so we have to see about that. But besides those things, I think we're pretty much locked down pretty much in terms of events. We could get something new again. We could see 4 general Nintendo Directs this year. We could see 3 Pokemon Presents or something like that. But I'm thinking 3 general Nintendo Directs, maybe 1 or 2 Super Mario Galaxy movie directs. Obviously 2 Pokemon Presents. Obviously we have Pokemon Worlds and Pokemon XP, and then maybe a Zelda movie direct. But now we can actually start predicting about the games and what Nintendo mainly will be announcing and talking about this year, which is very, very exciting. Yes, now we are pretty much on what's probably going to be the bulk of new discussion points and predictions for this video, and that is Nintendo's announcements for this year. We have 3 slides. At least we have 2 slides focused on Nintendo's announcements, and then 1 slide focused on third-party games. But yeah, we have a lot we could talk about here. Going back to the other slides, we don't really have much slated for the second half of the year, as I stated here, and we possibly have nothing slated for the second half of the year if Fire Emblem Fortune Weave and Splatoon Rares does come out, before the end of June. So there's a lot that could potentially be on the lineup for this year, and what Nintendo could be announcing. And that, I mean, obviously, it is the first full year that the Switch 2 on the market, so maybe Nintendo just have a big year planned for it. But here we have a couple of different points I want to talk about. So we have Nintendo's holiday games. So I have a couple predictions for those. We have Nintendo Switch Sports, because I think there's 2 ways they can go with a new one this year. We have Metroid Prime 6. We have the Pokemon 30th anniversary. We have the Nintendo Switch 2 edition / free updates. And then we have Smash Bros. I mean, maybe, but I do want to start off with Nintendo's holiday games, just because I think that's probably where the bulk of new announcements will be around, if in the second half of the year. So we have Pokemon Generation 10. I think that is probably the closest thing to a given amongst everything that I'm going to talk about here. It does make sense. It is the 30th anniversary. There's been some speculation and some leaks out there about when it'll be releasing. So I'm pretty sure it's probably gonna release this year in the second half. Normally around the October-November section, as Pokemon usually releases. I think it's gonna be the big. I think it's gonna be the big game for Nintendo this year. The big seller, at least, the big holiday seller for Nintendo. Maybe not Nintendo's biggest game, because we could have another big game releasing alongside it. But I think terms sales wise, I think it'll be the big game. Pokemon Generation 10, I think it's a given. And yeah, again, as we get closer to the Pokemon Presents that will probably be announced on Pokemon Day, we'll probably talk a little bit more about it then. But I think this will be the big Pokemon game. I guess the one thing I could make here is I think it'll be exclusive to the Switch 2, and I don't honestly think there's any games on here besides maybe 2 of the Pokemon Anniversary stuff that I'm going to talk about that will actually be releasing on the Nintendo Switch. I think it'll be all Nintendo Switch 2 titles. And again, I think that also applies to Pokemon Generation 10. I think it will be a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. I know that it could be on Nintendo Switch, but I just think Nintendo, obviously, they had big problems with Scarlet and Violet on the Switch. It wasn't obviously the best running game, but obviously with the Switch 2, they were able to remedy pretty much every single major performance issue with the game. And I think with the Switch 2 power, I think they're going to do the same thing with Generation 10. I think it will be a Switch 2 exclusive, just maybe out of necessity because they need the power for performance. The next game I have is Luigi's Mansion 4 / something from Next Level Games. I want to say it's Luigi's Mansion 4 because Luigi's Mansion 4 makes the most sense. But obviously Next Level could be working on something different. They could be working on a new Punch-Out. They could possibly be working on a Star Fox. They could be working on something like Metroid Prime Federation Force. Maybe they've been working on Metroid Prime Federation Force 2. I mean, something that's more realized in that vein. But I'm just gonna say Luigi's Mansion 4. I think it makes the most sense with the Mario 4th anniversary, with the Super Mario Galaxy movie. I think they're gonna want to have something major related to Mario out this holiday. And I think Luigi's Mansion 4 makes the most sense because I do bring up 3D Mario here, and I don't think 3D Mario is releasing this year. I think we will see the announcement of 3D Mario this year. And that obviously plays into all this. I mean, this is the games that they will be announcing throughout this year. But, obviously, I think we will probably talk more about that later in the year. Just because I don't think we're going to see it this year. I don't think we're going to see it announced and released this year. I think we will see it announced this year for probably the summer of next year. Somewhere around when Donkey Kong Bonanza released. And that's obviously, I think it would be a home run if Nintendo had 3D Mario to release. I think it would be a home run if Nintendo had the ability to release 3D Mario this year, alongside Pokemon Generation 10 and Luigi's Mansion 4 and the Super Mario Galaxy movie. But I kind of think that they're gonna want to separate things a little bit more, in terms of I think they're gonna want to have Generation 10 and Luigi's Mansion 4 or whatever next level's working on, and Monolith Soft's next game be what's mainly this holiday season, and then they can have 3D Mario, be pretty much the big evergreen title for next year and for the rest of the generation. I could be wrong in that, and I would love to see a new 3D Mario this year, and I would be pleasantly and very happily surprised by it. But I think we're gonna at least see announcement. I think we're gonna see the announcement of 3D Mario, but I don't think we'll release this year. But we obviously, I do finish the section off with Monolith Soft's next game, and I think it's in a very weird situation because Monolith Soft has been, they haven't released a new game since 2020. Well, actually, I'm a little bit off on that. They did release a new game last year with Extreme Chronicles X Definitive Edition, but they haven't released like a new game since 2022. And Monolith Soft usually was one of the more consistent developers during the Switch generation. Obviously, they had Xenoblade Chronicles 2 during the first year of the Switch. They had the DLC released the next year. They had Xenoblade Chronicles 3. They had Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and they had Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, alongside everything that they're working on. Because obviously they were also helping with the development of the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They're probably helping on the development of other games that I'm not really as aware of. Maybe I think they were helping with Mario Kart World possibly, and maybe Donkey. But they probably weren't working on Donkey Kong Bonanza. Maybe Mario Kart World, and then maybe even the ports or the Nintendo Switch 2 editions of the 2 Zelda games. So they're definitely always busy, but they're always usually pretty consistent on when they release their games. And they usually have a pretty a somewhat consistent schedule for their games. And so I'm kind of seeing the possibility of a new Monolith Soft game being revealed this year, especially if it is the game that we have seen like the art for a couple of times, the more medieval looking game, because they seem like they had been, in that case, they've been working on that for a very long time. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see it this year. I think maybe if Monolith Soft's next game isn't this year, maybe 3D Mario slots in. But I think from like those specific games, and then maybe, as I will mention in just a second, Nintendo Switch Sports, I think we have a pretty solid July to December lineup. And that doesn't even include like the smaller games, like the eShop exclusives or the maybe even Metroid 6, something like that. But yeah, the next section we have is Nintendo Switch Sports, and I think Nintendo Switch Sports is in a very weird situation, in the case that I think we will be seeing a new Nintendo Switch Sports very, very soon. But I don't know if it's going to be a Switch 2 edition or a new game. I think it could be a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Just looking at what we saw previously, was I mentioned with Super Mario Party and like Mario Party Superstars and Animal Crossing, they do sometimes release like new updates for an older game if they're planning something new for like a new game or like Nintendo Switch 2 edition. And I think that could be the case here. I think with basketball releasing in 2024 for Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo Switch Sports, I think that was like an indication that they went back like and they started development either on Nintendo Switch 2 edition or the next game in the series. We haven't seen them really like introduce a new feature for a game and then just not do it like for another game and then do it for Nintendo Switch 2 edition. So I think I'm leaning towards it actually being a new game in the series, but in that case, I think it honestly could be like a July game. And I haven't really released, like I haven't really talked about like dates. I think Luigi Mansion 4 would be like an October game. Pokemon would be like November. Monolith Soft could be anywhere from like September to like or December. I don't think it will release in October or November, but I think like September or December works well for that game. And then Nintendo Switch Sports, like a new Nintendo Switch Sports, I think that works well in July. Maybe as alongside, Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave or Splatoon Raiders. But I included the possibility of a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, but I am leaning towards there being a new game for the series. And I'm very excited for that, especially since I think they're like what we saw with Mario Tennis Fever. I think I think it was EPD4 that worked on Nintendo Switch Sports. I think they probably learned a lot from releasing that game, and we'll see like a lot more improvements for Nintendo Switch Sports 2 or Nintendo Switch 2 Sports or something like that. I think that'd be really fun. Now, the last major game that we have here that I'm like not questioning, like I don't have like a question about, is Metroid 6. And I think we'll see something new for Metroid this year. Obviously, we just had Prime 4 release in December, but I think, it has been 5 years since, well, but this year, October, it'll be 5 years since Metroid um, Dread released. And so I think we're on track for something new for the 2D Metroid series. It could be a Super Metroid remake. And that'd be totally fine because Mercury Steam obviously also worked on the Metroid 2 remake. So if they want to go like Metroid 2 to Dread, Super Metroid remake, and then Metroid 6, I think that makes sense as well. But it's in the weird situation in my mind where if they do a Super Metroid remake this year, or like it releases this year, then we're probably not getting Metro like in that like if they follow like that same schedule, we're not getting Metroid 6 until 2031, and that'll be 10 years since Metroid Dread. And I'm not sure Nintendo really wants to have like that big of a separation in like new games, unless they're doing something different with Super Metroid. Maybe they introduce like new story points in that game, or like new topics, like not new topics, but like new levels and stuff like that. But I think release wise, I think it makes sense for this to be Metroid 6. I think maybe like timeline wise, I think it also makes sense for it to be Super Metroid. So I think something new from 2D Metroid could happen this year. And again, it all really lines up. I think we're seeing either 3D Mario, Monolith Soft's next game, Nintendo Switch Sports, or Metroid 6. I think we're gonna see like 2 of those games released this year. And if I had like to make a guess, I think I'm actually leaning towards Switch Sports and a new Metroid, 2D Metroid for this year. And then the big surprise being maybe a new 3D Mario. But on the second half of points we have here, we have Pokemon's 30th anniversary games. Again, I already mentioned Generation 10. That's probably gonna be my most anticipated game once it is announced on Pokemon Day. Hopefully on Pokemon Day. I mean, obviously it's not, and everything's not a guarantee, but I think it will be announced on Pokemon Day. And yeah, so Generation 10, my most anticipated game for the year. The game I'm expecting, it's probably, I mean, again, it's gonna be my biggest game of the year. It probably will be my game of the year unless 3D Mario releases. Just, there's some bias in that, but I just love the Pokemon franchise again. And I'm very excited just to see Generation 10. And again, it is 30th anniversary. So I think something like what they did with Sun and Moon, I think they're going to want to get a game out for the 20th anniversary, 30th anniversary. Probably we'll see like Generation 13 on the 40th anniversary. But yeah, I think that's what I'm expecting there. And then we also have classic titles. I didn't say NSO classic titles because I am of the mindset that I do think they are going to do NSO like equivalents, but on their own app. Like maybe not like NSO equivalents, but like apps that you can buy off of the Nintendo eShop instead of them being like on NSO. Just because I think they're gonna want to do like Pokemon home connectivity, and there's always the thing of they're gonna allow save states in the game. I think they're gonna I think they want their own specific thing, and so I think that's what they're gonna do. I think if that even happens, I don't know if there's. I'm always of the mindset that they're always gonna do the release of the older games on the Switch like every year on Pokemon Day, and that never really happens. And then this year I'm expecting Pokemon Champions to be the major shadow drop at Pokemon Day, or during the Pokemon Presents a line of Pokemon Day. So I think we could be in a situation where, at least not in February, maybe in the July-August Pokemon Presents, they show off classic titles. But it's in a very weird situation. I would love for them to re-release, Red, Blue, Yellow, and maybe the Generation 2 titles, and then maybe the Generation 3 titles. But we'll just have to see. We'll just have to wait and see on that. That's like a hope for me. Not really a prediction. That's a hope. And then I think the NSO GameCube releases, I think they are going to happen this year. I think they are already slated for this year as well. I think alongside Pokemon Champions, I think we will see those possibly release on the same day as the Pokemon Presents for Pokemon Day. But I think we'll also, at the very least, get release dates for those two, Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon Colosseum XD. And yeah, so the Pokemon 30th anniversary I think will be a big part of Nintendo's year, in some ways. And then Also, we have another, like obviously the Zelda anniversary would be another big part of it. But the other point that we have before we enter the scenario with Super Smash Brothers is Nintendo Switch 2 editions slash free updates, and I did separate this from the Nintendo Switch Sports section just because I think I'm talking mainly about the free updates here. So I think all of these games get free updates. Super Mario Maker 2, I could see a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for that, in the sense that maybe they add like a new mode, not a new mode, like a new game mode, like I forgot what they're called in the game, but like the bit like a different game setting, like some of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, like they add a new game setting for that. I could see them doing that, or maybe like adding new items and everything. But I think a Switch 2 free update is more likely for that. Same thing with Pikmin 3 Deluxe and Pikmin 4. They kind of just did an update for Pikmin 4, and so I could see that. Well, actually, I didn't really think too much about Pikmin 4. Mainly Pikmin 3, I think that gets a new free update, but Pikmin 4, I could see a Switch 2 edition if they don't have plans for Pikmin 5 for like the next like year or two. And like they add like a new area you can explore and like some new collectibles and everything. But I think everything here has a chance of getting like a free update slash at least a free update, and then Pikmin 4 could get like a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Luigi Mansion 3, that's kind of in line with Luigi Mansion 4. If Luigi Mansion 4 does release this year, I could see them adding some of the upgrades that they have in Luigi Mansion 4 to Luigi Mansion 3. Maybe some of the fidelity, improvements that they have in Luigi Mansion 4. I don't think Luigi Mansion 4 had like, any performance issues, but if Luigi Mansion 3 had any performance issues, but if Luigi Mansion 4 runs at like 60 FPS, I could easily see them applying that to Luigi Mansion 3 as well. But yeah, that's more, again, if Next Level's working on Luigi Mansion 4, I think it makes sense for them to also go back and do something with Luigi Mansion 3. And then the last thing is something we've honestly been speculating on for a very long time. And again, that kind of also goes back to Microsoft, is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 or Xenoblade Chronicles series free updates. I don't think there's going to be any Nintendo Switch 2 editions for the Xenoblade Chronicles series, but I could easily see, again, if Microsoft does have a new game this year, them going back and also updating, making the, like maybe adding some of the improvements again from that game to the older games. Like maybe some of them run at 60 FPS now, or maybe they fix some of like the visual issues, like with I think the size, like the text size on some of the games and everything like that. Maybe like the resolution, they were able to like improve it, because I know they have like Microsoft is obviously technical geniuses, so they're obviously like normally you don't really see some of the resolution issues that the game have, but I know they to us like on some like especially with Chronicles 2, some of like the resolution like kind of low. I think maybe also on Xenoblade Chronicles 3, like the handheld resolution is kind of low, but they were able to like it's not as obvious. So I could see them going back and like fixing some of those issues with a free update. But the final section of this section 1 is Super Smash Brothers, and I'm not expecting a Super Smash Brothers release this year. Outside of I mentioned here Super Smash Brothers 64 or Melee via Nintendo Switch Classics. I could see that happening, especially with Super Smash Brothers 64. Not really with Melee, because I think they're gonna want to. I could see Melee, but I think they would do 64 first and then maybe Melee later. Maybe like in the generation. But Super Smash Brothers, obviously we just had Kirby Air Riders from Mr. Sakurai. So the big question is, would he even have time to do a new Smash Brothers? But in my mind, the other question is he working on the next Smash Brothers as the director? He could have honestly been working on Kirby Air Riders while being a supervisor to the next Smash Brothers. And then the next director is already taking the reins of it. They're working on the next Smash. Because I do believe that they are working on the next Smash Brothers to a certain extent. I don't think they're going to leave this series dormant for, what it could possibly be 9 to 10 years, without like a new title. And I think it's very likely that the reason why Nintendo went to ask Mr. Sakurai for like to be able to work on Kirby Air Riders was because they had a plan in place that, maybe while Kirby Air Riders was being in development, that's also when like Smash Brothers for Switch 2 also started development. Now I do ask, the question here, is it Nintendo Switch 2 edition or a new game? Because I do think if it is Nintendo Switch 2 edition, that's something smaller that Mr. Sakurai could have worked on while we're doing Career Writers, or he could be working on right now with like a 2027 release date. But I think also I think Nintendo wants to have a new Smash out very like early in the generation. Normally has always been the case. Normally it's always been around 2 years since the console release that like, the Smash Brothers released within that section. The major the major exception to that being Nintendo 3DS edition of Super Smash Bros. 4. But I think it is. I think that eventually they're gonna have to start working on figuring out like what the future for Smash Brothers is beyond Sakurai. And I think Sakurai also has been working with Nintendo on that. I think we will see that this generation. And I think they have honestly been working on the next Smash, and I think it will release next year. But I think we will see it this year. I think that could be like their big June announcement or even their big September announcement. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. Once Smash is announced, we'll have a lot more to talk about. But I do think they're working on a new game. I don't think they're going to go back and do a Switch 2 edition of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And I think, just the idea of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate probably was the swan song for Mr. Sakurai's developer ties to Smash. I think he'll be continue being a supervisor, maybe a producer of the series, but I think they have figured out what they're going to do next after Smash Ultimate. And I think that is with a new director and like a new take on this franchise, which I'm very, very excited to see. But yeah, coming off of Smash Brothers now, we have a couple of other things I would like to talk about. Again, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but we don't really have much on the Switch 1, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be like much new games left for the Switch 1. But I do want to talk about like what may be left, and like I think they're going to have a couple of Switch 1 announcements this year. Nintendo NSO Classics updates, the Legend of Zelda 40th anniversary, the continuation of the Super Mario Brothers anniversary, 40th anniversary, and then the return. My prediction, a big prediction here for me, is the return of a franchise that did not get a new game on the Nintendo Switch. And then I have like 3 personal hopes at the bottom. I won't really talk much about those. Those are just games I want to see released this year, announced this year. But I want to start off with the Switch 1. What is left for the Switch 1? Not just this year, but in general. This year I could see a couple of ports being announced for it. I have the Kirby Triple Deluxe Planet Robobot HD. There was a lot of speculation about that last year and the year before that. That's possibly what Nintendo has next for Kirby, and in the median between now and when like the next Kirby in the Forgotten Land releases, or like the next 2D Kirby releases. So I could see that happening, and I do think something like that would release on both the Switch and the Switch 1. With like a Switch for 1 version, and then the Switch 1 version is like backwards compatible with the Switch 2. We also have Metroid Prime 2 and 3, which again, I think now this is a little less likely. Not because it hasn't happened yet, but Metroid Prime 4 does set off on a new story beyond Metroid Prime 2 and 3. So I think it makes sense for... I don't think it really makes as much sense now to have those games released. I think they still could if they need, like, if they want to have something else on the Switch, especially if Pokemon is not Pokemon Generation 10 isn't a Switch 1 game. I do think they still want to have one more big game on the Switch the Switch, and I don't think like these 3 are that, but if they have like a combination of like 2 of these, like Metroid Prime 2 HD, something from Kirby, and then Luigi's Mansion HD, I think that could really help, especially if like Luigi's Mansion HD releases around the same time as Luigi's Mansion 4, like a couple, maybe like a month or 2 before it. I think that could be, pretty fun. Having Luigi's Mansion on the holiday while Luigi's Mansion 4 is also out there. But yeah, and obviously there could be some eShop games for the Switch 1. There could be something smaller. I do mention a little later about something about a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and I could totally see that also being a Switch 1 game. But I think for like the Switch one for like major games, I think Pokemon Legends ZA and Metroid Prime 4, and then Tomodachi Life are probably the last major games releasing on the system. Because I think Rhythm Heaven will still do pretty well on the system, but I don't obviously I don't think it'll reach like the heights of like Pokemon and like Tomodachi Life. But yeah, I think Rhythm Heaven is probably, if Rhythm Heaven releases after Tomodachi Life, I could see that being the last Switch one new release from Nintendo. We'll have to see. You know, again, we could see a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the console. We also have NSO Classic updates. I don't have really much more to say on that, just besides I think we're going to see more NSO Classic updates. I already talked about like the Pokemon Coliseum games. I think that's probably going to release this year. If I think they're confirmed to release this year. I think Sunshine is also Super Mario Sunshine is confirmed to release on GameCube NSO this year. I think we could get a new roadmap this year of GameCube games. Again, we could also see like Smash 64 release on NSO 64, but I think some like, I don't know, we normally get like at least one NSO update a month, if not more than one. So I think we'll continue to get those. I think we'll continue to get 1 or 2 updates every month. And I think it will usually be like a GameCube game, and then maybe like an N64 game or like a couple of Game Boy games, a couple Game Boy Advance games, stuff like that. Then we get to what I think will be a pretty, I don't know, it's hard to gauge what the Legend of Zelda 40th anniversary will look like, because I already talked about, I think we will see the new trailer, or like the first teaser trailer for the Mario, for the Legend of Zelda movie. But I also think we could see other things for Zelda this year. I think they are going to want to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Zelda. Because I think it makes sense to celebrate it. Obviously, you know, for Nintendo, it does seem like only when it really lines up with a game release or something, they will do celebrate the anniversary, or they have like a big thing for the anniversary. I don't think anything is like lining up necessarily right now for like a release that's like huge for the anniversary. But I could see like a new multiplayer game. Again, this does go back to Switch 1. This could be like another Switch 1 release if Rhythm Heaven isn't the final Switch 1 release of the generation for the Switch. I think a new multiplayer game actually does make sense, because obviously I think you want to have as many people playing that. Something like along the lines of like Triforce Heroes or like Four Swords Adventures. I think that could be really fun if they did that. The return of the HD Wii U games has been speculated for a very long time, that maybe one day they will go back and re-release them, maybe with like 4K enhancements and everything. And when I say like HD Wii U games, it was Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. I think Twilight Princess is still possible. I don't know if Wind Waker is as possible anymore, just because obviously Wind Waker is already on NSO for the GameCube. So I mean, and it's not the Wii U version, so it's not necessarily like gonna take away too much by it being on NSO. And obviously Sunshine is also gonna release on NSO very soon, and that was in the 3 All-Stars collection for Mario. So it's not like I'm not ruling them out entirely, but I think Twilight Princess is more likely than Wind Waker, and I don't think they're gonna do like a double collection of the two. I think they're gonna do them separately. So I think Twilight Princess overall is probably more likely in this case. I will skip at the third point there for a second and go to the Ocarina of Time remake that has been rumored for a while, or at least speculated on for a while, that maybe Nintendo is working on an Ocarina of Time remake. I think for the 40th anniversary, like if they want to have a big game for the 40th anniversary, that makes the most sense. Because I do not think that we will see I don't think they will now release the next mainline Zelda game. Even though I think we are probably like a year or 2 away from that release. Like I think 2027, 2028 is when the next major Zelda game is going to release. I do think Ocarina of Time probably makes more sense, just because I think it, ties back again. This is most of the time the anniversaries are a little more nostalgia. It's based off nostalgia, and I think an Ocarina of Time remake does make sense in that case, more than a new Zelda. The next mainline Zelda being released this year. But I do think that the first look of the next mainline Zelda could happen this year, and I am honestly I think so. The way I'm looking at this is, I think that's honestly more likely in the Ocarina of Time remake. But I think the Ocarina of Time remake obviously has the higher chance of actually being released this year. I think Nintendo usually does want to have the next mainline Zelda shown off early on in the generation of their consoles, and I think it makes sense, if they want to do a September direct section on Zelda. They show off the movie trailer there. They show off maybe one of these HD ports there, maybe like a multiplayer game there, and then they close that section off on a new mainline Zelda. Um, I think that's very possible, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it is possible that that actually happens this February, because February 21st, I believe, is the anniversary of Zelda, and Nintendo did line up the Nintendo Direct in last September with the 40th anniversary of Mario. So I think it's possible, and I'm kind of hyping myself up now about it, but I think there is a chance we do at least see the next mainline Zelda game this year. And maybe if they do a direct that's like around the time of the Zelda anniversary, maybe they have Mr. Aonuma come back and he introduces, they're working on, maybe they show off like another image of the Legend of Zelda movie, and then maybe some casting on the Legend of Zelda movie. And then we have one more thing we would like to show you, and it is the next mainline Zelda. A very short teaser for it, I'm assuming, but maybe, just maybe, they show it off. And then, so, we go from this Zelda anniversary to the pretty much the end of the Mario anniversary. Again, I think a new Mario versus Donkey Kong, it would be a cool thing. It's not really a prediction, that is a hope that we do get a new Mario versus Donkey Kong. I talked about a new Captain Toad all the way at the bottom. I think, Nintendo software technologies did help with Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and I think they helped with a bunch of the EPD8 ports of Captain Toad and Bowser's Fury and everything. So I could see them going back and maybe taking on the reins of a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong or a new Captain Toad. I think that'd be pretty cool. I don't have much more to say on that, but I think maybe even a remake of one of the old other Mario vs. Donkey Kong would be pretty cool. But I don't think there's a reason for them to, after they did all that work on making the remake of the original Mario vs. Donkey Kong, I don't think there's any reason for them not to continue to work on that franchise and do more in that series. So I think a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong is very, very possible, and I think that'd be pretty cool. That'd be a pretty cool announcement. Another if the 3D Mario isn't aligned with the 40th anniversary, releasing during the 40th anniversary, I think a Mario vs. Donkey Kong could be, and I think that'd be a pretty cool addition to alongside Yoshi and the Mysterious Book and the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and possibly Luigi's Mansion 4. And then we also have post-launch Mario Kart World and Mario Tennis Fever support. I mentioned this a little earlier. They didn't really confirm anything for Mario Tennis Fever, so no, I think they confirmed Aces a lot earlier. But I think they confirmed Aces around the time now, before it released, a month before it released, that they would be getting post-launch support. And they did not do that for Mario Tennis Fever, so it could be something they are planning, a lot less updates for it. Maybe again, a couple characters, and then maybe the final update is a little bit more of an expansion on the adventure mode. But I think Mario Kart World support, on-point launch support, either through free updates or paid DLC, is a lot more likely. Just because I think Mario Kart World is their evergreen title for this generation, alongside once 3D Mario releases. I think 3D Mario and Mario Kart World will be their major evergreens in the games that continue to sell as the generation goes on. And I could see, obviously, and I think a lot of things, obviously, I think they're going to be announced this year. Not all of them will be released this year, but something like a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong, I think that could be announced this year, released next year. I think Mario Kart World DLC could be announced this year and released this year, or at least start being released this year. But I think Mario Kart World, I think that could be DLC, could be an announcement this year. I think the Switch one or two more games could be announced this year. A new multiplayer Zelda game would be a pretty cool announcement for this year, especially to tie in with the 40th anniversary. So the final things are pretty much hopes, really. The return of a franchise that did not get a new game on Nintendo Switch. Star Fox, it kind of did, with Star Fox 2 being released with the SNES Classics um, system and the service. But I think a new Star Fox eventually will happen. And again, I was talking about maybe Next Level Games takes on the reins of doing a new Star Fox. I think that'd be pretty cool if they did that. But again, I'm not really expecting that per se. And then a new Chibi Robo. I think that'd be really cool. Obviously, we just got Chibi Robo on the GameCube Classics, and I'm hoping Chibi Robo. They see like a lot of people went back and played Chibi Robo, and now they're like, okay, now we can go back and make a new Chibi Robo in the vein of the original game. I think that'd be pretty fun. That's again, like this last section is pretty much hopes. Kid Icarus Uprising, Captain Toad, Pilot Wings. I'd love to see a new game in those series. Obviously, I don't think with Kid Icarus, I think Sakurai is going to want to work on that. And so obviously he just released Kirby Air Rider. So it's a little different than the Smash situation where I think he's going to be directly involved in the new Kid Icarus if they were to do that. So I think Uprising HD makes sense, or Uprising 4K makes sense. A new Captain Toad obviously would make a lot of sense in my mind, at least. Maybe that could be the Luigi's Mansion 4 for this year. And, with Captain Toad possibly being in the Galaxy movie, that is like the major tie-in from the movie. And then Pilot Wings. I love Pilot Wings. Pilot Wings is a very fun series. I would just love to see a new Pilot Wings. But yeah, the last couple of sections we have here are basically just focused on things outside of video games and third parties. So we'll probably go through those pretty quickly, but let's get right into that. And yeah, so third party games, again, we're probably going to go through these pretty quick just because I don't really have many predictions for third party games. But obviously we already know about titles like Final Fantasy VII Remake is making it to the Switch 2, Orbitals, which is probably, again, alongside like Mario Tennis Fever and Generation 10 Pokemon and Pokepia and like stuff like Luigi's Mansion 4. Orbitals is on that, like, is up there with my most anticipated games. I'm very excited for Orbitals. You can see I included a picture of Orbitals right there. We also have Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, Elden Ring, the Duskbloods, Resident Evil Requiem, and the Resident Evil collection of Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9. So, including Requiem, we got Pragmata. But we also have some surprises and unannounced projects that we could see this year in the form of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I don't believe that's been announced yet for the Switch 2. I know they pretty much confirmed that it would be coming to Switch 2 alongside like things like Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 14 online. So we could see a couple Final Fantasy announcements this year for the Switch 2. Monster Hunter Wilds, or we could see, it has been around 5 years since Monster Hunter Rise released on Switch 2, and we're also, I think we're going to see Monster Hunter Stories 3 released this year on Switch 2, so there's a lot of Monster Hunter this year, and we could see one more Monster Hunter game in the form of Monster Hunter Rise 2, or like a Switch 2 time exclusive Monster Hunter game, and I think that'd be pretty cool as well. I think it would be pretty fun. We got rumored Team Bloober game. I think they've already pretty much confirmed that they're working on a game for Nintendo. It would be like a horror game, but I think they are confirmed that I do think they confirmed that they are working on a new game. I think it's called like Project M, so that's kind of funny. But I think, yeah, they're working on a horror game exclusively for the Switch 2 console. And I believe they did like a interview a couple of weeks ago, and they said like it's gonna take advantage of some like the more exclusive features for the Switch 2, like that's out on the Switch 2, like maybe the mouse controls or maybe the camera. I think that'd be pretty cool. And stuff like that. So I'm looking at my Switch 2 over there, but maybe like amiibo functionality of some kind, maybe the NFC reader. I think that'd be kind of cool. And then we have also the rumored Arc System Works game, which the rumored Arc System Works game was also done at the same time as we started getting information about like Dear Me I Was from Arc System Works as well. And Arc System Works also worked on games like Another Code Recollection. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think with Team Bluebird's game and Arc System Works game, I think they're both self-published by those studios. So I'm not expecting the Arc System Works game to be like another Code Recollection type of game. I think it is going to be something like maybe an exclusive, like a time exclusive console Switch fighting game, and maybe that takes up the place of Smash for a little bit. But I think it'd be pretty fun if they were to do that. I think it'd be kind of fun if like that is like what Smash is, and maybe it is like a crossover with Nintendo characters and some of Arc System Works like other games, like other characters from their other games. I think that'd be kind of cool as well. But since it's not published by Nintendo, I'm not really expecting that. I'm expecting something a little more, again, maybe something a little more in the line of like what they're doing, what Arc System Works is doing for Sony and PlayStation with Marvel Token. So still a very cool game though. So I'm very excited about that. And we also have Marvel Ultimate Alliance 4. That's like a real prediction or like a real hope. We haven't seen, I mean, it's Marvel Ultimate Alliance is in a very weird situation where I don't know if they can make another one that's not exclusive to Switch 2, or like the Switch consoles, just because I think Nintendo does own the publishing right. Then they do own the publishing rights for Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, so it would be weird for them to then do Marvel Ultimate Alliance 4, and it's on Switch, but it's also on every console, because I think they would probably want to continue some of the storylines or some of the points from Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 in it. And then finally we have Dragon Quest 12. I think that would be like the big thing for Nintendo's third party wise. I mean, obviously the other big announcements, we already have big announcements for third parties, including again Orbitals and the Duskbloods, but I think that Dragon Quest 12, I think they're gonna want to. I think it is also I believe it's the 40th anniversary of Dragon Quest this year, so it makes sense for Dragon Quest 12 to show up again. And I think it makes sense to like do that after Dragon Quest 7 Reimagined releases in a couple weeks. But I think, you know, I want to say, because obviously the re-reveal of Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D was done in Nintendo Direct in like the June 2024 Nintendo Direct. So I want to say maybe they give Dragon Quest 12's re-reveal to Nintendo for a Nintendo Direct in like June again. But I think they're going to want to do that as like an anniversary event. I think Dragon Quest 12 will be shown off again this year. I think it will still be releasing on the Switch 2. I mean, on the Switch and the Switch 2. I think, and then the Switch 2 will be like the next reveal of it. Like the Switch 2 it's being released on the Switch 2. And then maybe they give like another trailer for the game after it's re-revealed to Nintendo for like the June or September Direct. But I think we are getting very close to seeing Dragon Quest 12 again, and I think that's very exciting. But yeah, you know, that's pretty much it that I have for predictions and hopes for third-party games right now. Like I don't. There's obviously some games I hope makes it over to the Switch 2 from like other platforms, but I think like what some of the things I was thinking about here was like third-party studios as well. Like, do we see a new Astral Chain this year? Do we see a new Bayonetta this year? Stuff like that. And I don't really think so. I think we already have, I think what we pretty much just know leading up to the first half, like the second half of this year. And then I think we have like 3D. I think we have a new Pokemon game this year. I think we have something from Next Level. I think we have, you know, a couple of updates. I think we have maybe something from Zelda, maybe a new Marvel vs. Donkey Kong. So I think another collaboration game is something that's maybe early next year. But again, it could be revealed this year. And I think that's also the harder thing with some of these predictions, because sometimes I'm in the mindset of I'm only going to talk about games that are going to release. I think it's going to release this year, but there's a bunch of games that could be announced in June or September that release next year. You know, and like another, like maybe the Ocarina of Time remake is released next year. Maybe they do show off Mainline Zelda. And it's for like a holiday 2027 game. A new Cheap Robo Star Fox kind of feels like they would be next year, anyways, too. So like a new Kid Icarus, stuff like that would be next year. So again, that is really all I have for the games. The next section I have is stuff beyond the games, kind of. You know, this, and I'm probably gonna go through this pretty quickly. You know, I'm predicting things like, and the announcement of like theme park expansion will happen this year. We kind of know a little bit that Zelda, like the Hyrule theme park expansion, will be happening at Epic Universe. And I'm assuming it's probably gonna happen first in Japan and then at Epic Universe, but I think it will happen. I think they will announce that this year, and I think we could see, if we do get like a non-gaming direct, it could be for like a Hyrule expansion to Nintendo World, Super Nintendo World, which would be pretty cool. I think we get something along the side, like along the lines of Alarmo, like another Alarmo like project. I took this picture right before the day. I believe that is the day of the December Direct. I took this picture to celebrate that. It's Alarmo right there. And I do mention here that I could see it being something like Ring Fit Adventure 2. And that's in the sense that I think Ring Fit Adventure, I think like whatever it ends up being would be more life based. So like Alarmo is an alarm clock. So, that's more in like lifestyle stuff. And Ring Fit Adventure is kind of also in the same vein. So I could see them, especially since I think it would need a new accessory and everything, since the Switch 2 doesn't have like the heart rate monitor, or like the heart rate accelerometer. That's not the word. Accelerometer is not the word, but it doesn't have the IR camera, so it can't really track your heartbeat like Ring Fit Adventure could. So I think it could need a new accessory, and I could see maybe that new accessory also is tied to like another initiative Nintendo does that maybe isn't like connected to the game necessarily, but it does like it's something health oriented, which I think would be pretty cool. And then we have movie news. Again, I think we will see the first Legend of Zelda movie trailer this year. I think it will feature Ganondorf, and I think it will feature obviously Zelda and Link. I think it'll be pretty cool. Maybe some other castings. We have to wait and see on that. I think we also have a casting, not official casting, but I think we saw like the person that's playing Impa in like on set. I think we had like set photos, so I think that could also be announced later this year. I think we will see obviously more trailers and TV spots for the Super Mario Galaxy movie. I think we will see at least one more announcement of a Super Mario Bros. Movie universe film. So that could be Donkey Kong or Luigi's Mansion. Again, a Luigi's Mansion announcement, Luigi's Mansion 4 announcement could tie in with the Luigi's Mansion 4 movie being announced as well. But I think we will see one more of those. I think obviously this isn't like, it's kind of beyond games, but also amiibos are also kind of like collectible figures now. So I think we see even more amiibos. We already got the confirmation that we will be seeing. I believe there is a Pragmata amiibo already announced. I think there might be a Resident Evil 4 amiibo announced, and a Resident Evil 9 amiibo announced. And then obviously we still have the Super Mario Galaxy, Mario and Rosalina amiibos. So I think we'll see more of those. I think that makes sense with like whatever games they announced this year. Maybe they have an amiibo for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Maybe we have an amiibo for Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, stuff like that. But I'm very excited for that. I'm excited to see some more amiibos. And then the last question I really want to leave this prediction video off with is, does Nintendo dabble into any television/streaming programming? I don't think that those things would like release this year, but I think an announcement for something like that could happen. Obviously this year, or like late last year, we also got the Pikmin short that they released, and I could see them do more of that instead of maybe television and streaming programming. I think it's harder to break into that type of programming because you need long form program. Like you need a lot, like a show, in this case it would be like probably like an anime from Nintendo, and they would need, I think it requires a lot more time from them, and I think there's a lot more risk, I think, with doing television and streaming programming, because I don't think they would do something along like the Mario movie universe, or even like a Zelda series. I think it would be something a little smaller, and so I think they would do more of like the Pikmin shorts instead. Maybe like a Kid Icarus short, which a Kid Icarus short would be pretty cool, or like maybe even some Mario movie shorts of some sort. But I don't think they would necessarily right now dabble into television or streaming programming. But yeah, no, those are some of the predictions I have for some of the things Nintendo will be doing beyond gaming this year. And finally, I just want to finish off with some final thoughts. We got Pikmin here. I didn't really talk much about Pikmin besides Pikmin 3 and 4, but I hope to see something new Pikmin this year. I'm looking forward to a generally amazing year of Nintendo goodies. I hope that there will be some nice surprises that are in store via the games that are already that like we already know they're going to be released, and announcements for games that will be released this year, as well as announcements that will be made for 2026 and beyond. I hope that there's something Kid Icarus related, at some point this year. Again, I hope there's some Pikmin stuff later this year. I cannot wait for the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and I put a little smiley face there. Like I've been putting smiley faces all over this PowerPoint, but the final thing is, I just hope that you all have a fun year, especially just in general of Nintendo stuff, but also just in general like as a whole, hope you all have a fun year, and I will continue to upload more content as the year goes on. I'm looking forward to doing more videos. Again, I just want to get this video out of the way and just up before the Animal Crossing Nintendo Switch 2 edition released. So yeah, I hope you have a great year. I hope you have a fun year. I'm very excited for everything that we will be doing this year. Obviously, I'll have a lot more prediction videos as directs and Pokemon Presents and everything are announced. But that is all I have for you all today. You know, I'm very excited. You guys are gonna see the. I think the title's supposed to come on. Yeah, it is. Hopes and predictions for Nintendo's 2026, and I will see you all in the next one. Again, if you all watched all the way through this video, please, again, feel free to leave your hopes and predictions down in the comments below. But again, I will see you in the next one. Make sure to make sure happy, because I was my previous name, Generic Happy. I hope you all have a great 2026, and good.